today, everyone. We will lead this panel in English. So if you wish to grab the headphones for any reason, please do so. But we decided to have our discussion in English. The reason being mainly because one of our speakers is an English speaker, and the rest of us are too, to some extent. So I think it will just make a lot more sense to have a more fluid discussion if we all speak English. The theme of this panel is really to look a bit more closely at the issue of the EU cohesion, which is one of the challenges in terms of how we can move ahead. How we can move ahead as a team, how the Union can move ahead as a team of member states and institutions. We've heard an outline of a number of policy challenges, 10 strategic challenges of the EU, also specific ones. Commissioner Šefčovič outlined the issues vis-à-vis energy union. So I'd like to ask the panelists we have gathered here essentially three questions to address three issues. They don't necessarily have to pick up all three of them. They'll find their presentations in each one of those. But since we have a mixed panel, we're bringing representatives of member states, also representatives of institutions, the Council, the European Parliament, and the Commission. My first question is, what in your view are the key priorities for the EU's institutional cycle and also for this year? What are the policy challenges out of the 10 and perhaps others which are most pressing? The second issue, how can you pick it up, contribute to resolving these from your specific position, be it a representative of a member state, an MEP, or a representative of the European Commission? And last but not least, we would like to tackle at least one of those exit questions, which was already raised in the morning session, and that's the issue of the future membership of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain, in the European Union. How is this issue, the framing of it, the questions related to it, going to affect the ambitions, but also the realization of the EU's priorities? So how is this variable making the EU potentially more cohesive, or perhaps less so? And what can we do to also address this issue successfully so we can move ahead as a team? Those are the three framing questions for our panel, and I'm delighted to welcome the four panelists we have here. To my left is State Secretary Javorčík from this ministry, representing a member state, but also a member state which is going to take over EU presidency in the second half of next year. So we have several institutional affiliations here potentially in terms of how to tackle these issues. To my right is Štefanec, who is a member of European Parliament, member of the EPP group. Very well welcome. And then I'm Vladimír from Brussels. It's often difficult to get MEPs to Bratislava, Slovakia, but Friday usually works, so glad to have you here. And to my far right, we have Dušan Chrenek, who heads the representation of the European Commission here, and will be the voice of the Commission. And last, but certainly not least, we have our guest from the United Kingdom, Nat Copsey, who works in the FCO, the UK foreign industry, where he's part of the so-called referendum unit, which, as I learned last night, used to be the Future of Europe unit. So now it's the referendum unit, and maybe that just sums up the really importance of this issue, not just in the UK, but in the EU as a whole, if the Future of Europe turns into a referendum unit. Ned, very well welcome to you. This is not your first time in Bratislava. You used to come here as an academic. Now you've been an official for about 5 weeks. So I look forward to discussing the Brexit issue, but not just the Brexit issue with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask everyone on the panel to present very briefly their thoughts on these three questions and kick it off. State Secretary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vlado, and welcome to all of you. And also thank that you stayed after the first part of the conference, the high-level panel, and to presentation and then hope to have a good and fruitful discussion. But let me come back still to the title of the conference, which is Strong Mandate and Fragile Union. Politics. Okay. For the first part, the strong mandate of the Union, I think that it's good news. And that was, I hope, the message also from the Prime Minister and the Vice President of the Commission. It's good news because the changes in 2014 at the top level of EU institutions went rather smoothly. If I compare it to 2004 and 2009, when there were clashes between the European Parliament and the European Council, delayed the start of the Commission. Now the message was much better, and also I think that it helped to give the strong mandate for the new institutions. Why was that? I also think that there was a part of the political responsibility which were taken by the EU institutions, in particular the European Council and the European Parliament, since the leaders realized that in times of really fragile situation in the EU, it would be a really bad message to start with the internal clashes, which nobody would understand. So we overcame this starting period quite well. We got a new element into the whole political cycle that called the Strategic Agenda of the Union, document which was adopted by the leaders in June 2014, and which sets the framework for priorities for actions in the political cycle till 2020. It was for the first time that really the European Council, the leaders, defined this framework. And it was quite well matched by the 10 priorities of the Jean-Claude Juncker, which was presented in October and really are the basis for the work of the Commission. And what's important that we see also the delivery. We talked about a lot about the Energy Union, about the digital single market. Those are the issues which were defined by the strategic agenda or by the 10 priorities of the Jean-Claude Juncker. And now we are in the process of materializing that. On top of that, I maybe forgot, even the first initiative of the Juncker's Commission, the FC, the new fund, Juncker's Fund, which is still not finally adopted, but there is already political agreement between the Council and between the Parliament. So it means that it's to be delivered and the first projects are in the pipeline to be financed, which is good news considering how lengthy sometimes the decision-making procedures could take place in the Union. This signals that what's very important for the next political cycle, that there is understanding between the institutions how we want to go ahead with the priorities and with the concrete measures. I would say this is also a big novelty and good news. Here I think I'm a bit critical vis-à-vis Dušan when he had in the opening speech, he was just referring to the priorities of the Commission. But one needs to understand that the Commission is important, key player to kick off the proposals, but then it's up to the Member States and the Parliament to wrap it up and really deliver. So when we talk about the priorities, I think that it would be wise to start to change the narrative and to talk about the common priorities of all institutions. How we approach from the position of Slovakia as a member state and the future presidents those priorities. I don't want to go into details and maybe be concrete on Vlado's first question, because I think that there is a common sense what are the key priorities for the next period, and it was discussed in the conference. Now we are, especially with our partners in Trio, in Netherlands and Malta, try to define the Trio program. It was mentioned by Minister Vajčák that we had a fourth meeting this week, and I think that we made a progress. And also we took a quite important strategic decision how the Trio program should look like. It means that we, comparing to the previous program, which were like 100 pages long, really want to be focused, we want to be short, we want to be more political, and we would like to focus really on the main priorities for the Union. So the program will be maybe 10, 15 pages, doesn't matter the length, but the content really should be about the priorities where we see that the EU has added value. So I think that it's also complementary to the message which was sent by the Commission when they started to prepare their priorities work programs for each year, and I think that the member states are getting into sync with these priorities. It's not that easy because when you translate or you send this message within the institution, I mean the Commission, that okay, now we don't have 100 priorities or legislative initiatives per year, just 20, and you get feedback from many officials that what I'm going to do now. So that the message also is that we now need to focus rather on the implementation. The same goes in the member states. When we discussed the zero program, again, everybody would like to see himself in the program, but we try to send a message, okay, it's not possible, we really need to streamline our decision making. And the same goes to the European Parliament, when suddenly there won't be that many rapporteurs and deputies which could have some bigger profile within the European Parliament. So now we, on the basis of the trio, we will define our presidency priorities, the Slovak ones. It's still 1 year and 1 month to go. We are just in the beginning of the process, but I think that also we will try to follow this overall logic. Maybe last remark for introduction, not to be too long, on the cohesion of the EU. I'm glad that you talked about one exit, even I don't like the word Brexit because it has a rather negative connotation. I would prefer to talk about the terms of UK membership in the EU. But as well, it's very important not to mix Brexit and Brexit, since both have quite different. It's a challenge for the cohesion of the EU, but that's it. What's common. The rules are quite different in Greece. It's linked to the economic situation and delivery of Greece in their commitments within the eurozone. In the UK, of course, the issue is much more profound, I would say, in terms of political appreciation of the process, since it's rather about the fundamental question whether the people are identified with the union as it is. I will not go into the details on that. From our perspective, something was already said by Mr. Bilčík, and I would like to leave the space for Nat to develop the idea. But one thing is clear, our starting point is that we need the UK in the EU, and I hope that the UK voters will decide the same way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that brief but very substantive introduction in terms of outlining the presidency, but also touching on the issue of the UK and pitching it all in a very positive note. But there was this issue of what are we to do now if we are doing things differently, which means actually fewer things and perhaps with more quality but none less fewer things. How is this affecting the European Parliament is the question. There are all these stories already in Brussels news about MEPs being bored or falling asleep or playing all kinds of computer games while sitting in plenary sessions. But I think this is nothing new actually, it's been happening all along. But somehow it's getting this new spin in terms of why do we need the European Parliament after all when we are producing effectively the number of legislative measures. So what's the challenge for you in terms of tackling the new realities of the EU? Štefanec.
Thank you very much. And really I'm honored to accept your invitation not only on Friday, but as you said, especially Friday is the best time because yesterday even we discussed all the priorities in our committees in Brussels. But let me highlight, first of all, the basic fact, and I like to confirm also the explanation by Mr. Javorčík, that the priorities of European Parliament are not different ones compared to priorities of European Commission. Of course, European Parliament is backing up the European Commission, so therefore the most important priority is to improve the growth, number of jobs, so to tackle unemployment in Europe. I think that's the key issue nowadays. I have to say after first year so far, it's some slight improvement, I can say, because the unemployment rate in the European Union is coming down, is the best in the past 3 years. However, Still, it is a double-digit figure, therefore we cannot be happy, neither in Slovakia, neither in the European Union, but there is a slight development. If we go in detail to talk about the priority of the improvement of employment, we talk about three key issues. First of all, there is the priority of building energy union, what has been discussed already in the first panel quite in detail. Secondly, the priority to build digital single market, and thirdly, to prepare the most important agreement ever in the European Parliament, and this is TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership between European Union and the United States. Those are the issues which we do believe will help to improve employment in the European Union. If we go in detail, I think it's not necessary to go too much in detail talking about energy union, but just shortly to build infrastructure to allow trade with the energy, so to improve energy market and to diversify the sources, because we are so much dependent in the European Union on the sources. Just compared to United States, our average price level is 30% higher in terms of energy prices compared to the United States. And for example, from 2005 to 2012, just taking into consideration gas prices decreased in the United States by 66%. In contrary, in the European Union increased by 33%, particularly because of shale gas influence in the United States, but the result is very evident. And we have to take it into consideration, particularly if we talk about TTIP, that really there is a competitive advantage to have lower energy prices, significantly lower energy prices in the United States. Therefore, energy union is so important to address these energy prices and to improve energy prices in the European Union. Talking about the priority of digital single market, this is particularly in detail discussed in our committee, Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee, which I am part of. So we talk about the improvement of broadband. So there is the priority to cover 100% of European territory by broadband by 2020. Secondly, really to create a real digital single market, because in reality we have 28 markets. There is still a lot of barriers in terms of communication country by country, in terms of e-commerce, in terms of really information technologies used. So in order to improve electronic services, in order to improve electronic trade, there is a lot of work in terms of cutting barriers. And I'm not talking only about roaming charges, which is quite visible highlight, but we have to talk really about movie investing, we have to talk about trade, we have to talk about all the obstacles which limit electronic trade country by country. Of course, very much discussed is the area of data protection also, and this is connected not only with digital single market, but also with TTIP. Talking about the third priority, TTIP, what we are trying to highlight there, it is the position of small and medium enterprises, because those are the most important employers in the European Union as well as in Slovakia. We have to help them just by cutting barriers, just to minimize administration costs, to minimize bureaucracy, and to improve their environment. So we are pushing for the special chapter for SMEs, small and medium enterprises, which should be included in this TTIP agreement. We are calling for the special hotline in US as well as in the European Union for SMEs. They can call if they have some questions, some problems. And I think what can help very much is not only to cut tariff barriers, but also to cut non-tariff barriers for them. So particularly in terms of registration of products and services. So if they are registered in EU once or in US, they can use the benefit of the new free trade agreement. I think that's the key point, particularly for SMEs in countries like in Slovakia. We know that 90% of GDP in our country is from export. So therefore, we have to do still a lot of work in terms of improvement our export opportunities. Last but not least, you mentioned the situation in UK, so I would like to briefly touch this issue. I have to say, I know that on one side it is a risky game to talk about whether to be in EU or not, but it's a legitimate issue. As we know, as of 2009, because of Lisbon Treaty, we have this opportunity to not only be in, but also to go out if there is a general will of the country, respective countries. On the other hand, I think this is not only a legitimate point, but this is something paradoxically what can improve the functioning of the European Union. So I don't see it negatively, I see it positively, just because of 3 points. First one is Mr. Cameron, who was clearly winner of last elections. He stated very, very clearly that he is for membership in the European Union. Secondly, for example, I read just this week the poll in the United Kingdom. Majority of people are pro-membership, roughly 55%, and 39% are against. So there is a general opinion based on this poll that Brits would like to stay in the European Union. And thirdly, I think this push for improvement and better function, for better efficiency of the European Union is legitimate, and this is our common objective. That's what we want to achieve. To improve decision-making process, to have less administrative cost, to have less bureaucracy. I think we are on one goal. So I would see it positively, and I think this process, investors, can improve the functioning of European Union. And of course, the wish is the improvement, and also that this important country will still be an important part of EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much for outlining those 3 key priorities and then being very clear on what they are: energy union, digital market, and PTIB. And also thank you for pitching the issue of future deal on UK membership in the EU as a possible opportunity. And perhaps that's my question also to Dušan Chrenek. Is it an opportunity to improve not just relations within the EU, but also the EU as a whole? And what other priorities is the Commission seeking to pick up in the next few weeks and months? Dušan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Vlado. So firstly, to react, the Commission doesn't like to speak about exit, so not any exit. Therefore, our way, I think that it's the best to avoid any exit. What is necessary to speak about the improvement of functioning of the European Union. But on positive side, I'm really glad that I have heard from all speakers that now the new European Commission has a strong mandate, and that 10 priorities proposed by the Commission, they are now EU priorities. So it's excellent because we need close cooperation of all institutions in order to deliver on these priorities. Firstly, I would like to highlight that the new Commission brought some substantial changes in its composition, in its structure, but also in the approach to the policy making. And strong mandate is coming not only through the process of election of its president, Mr. Juncker, but also of the composition. There are several former prime ministers, ministers, members of the Commission, members of the European Parliament, so really personal structure is very strong. But also the President of the Commission changed the composition. There are several vice presidents responsible for projects. So in the past it was every commissioner has had its own area, and there was less coordination and less projects for a number of commissioners. Now in several areas like energy union, you heard Mr. Šefčovič telling that he is coordinating 14 commissioners. It's the same in digital single market, also migration there is cooperation, and it's not always easy. So it's a new structure, so also it needs time really to function efficiently 100%. But definitely there is a desire to work closer, to remove silo mentality, and to have the best proposals for the European Union. But also the approach is different. President Juncker is strongly committed to have the European Union that is bigger and more ambitious on big things, and smaller and more modest on small things. From this perspective, the Commission of President Juncker defined also 10 priorities in order to bring a real positive difference for people in the European Union. And also from the naming of these priorities, that's evident that there is a concentration on jobs, growth, investment, and projects that can strengthen the European Union, energy union, digital single market, also better functioning of internal market, and also, for example, on economic and monetary union, because in the past we had many problems, and problems in the Eurozone were stemming also from inadequate structure. There are many changes, but still there is a need for further improvement. Other areas refer to migration, justice and fundamental rights, democratic change, but also to external policies, TTIP, and global role of the European Union. The Commission would like to be also more active in member states. So commissioners go more often to member states to explain their policies to the governments, to parliaments, to stakeholders, but also to broad public. And today we have seen also this example. Mr. Šefčovič being here. Yesterday we had 2 conferences on energy union. In 10 days, Vice President Katainen is coming together again with Vice President Šefčovič to explain the new investment plan for the European Union. Maybe I would shortly address some areas. I will exclude energy and digital single market that was already mentioned, explained. But I would like to mention area related to jobs, growth, and investment. This is not only about investment package, but it's about 3 areas that should be interconnected: structural reforms, fiscal responsibility, and investment. Investment package is extremely important for the EU because there is no lack of funds, lack of finances, of money, but it's lack of confidence. So many projects are sleeping because entrepreneurs, they don't dare to start these projects because they have no confidence in the future. So this investment package is mostly to motivate entrepreneurs and mainly private sector to start business, to go to the new areas, and to implement projects that are important for the whole European Union. In comparison, these years before crisis, 2007, 2006, the investment in the EU declined substantially. So there is a real need to start again investment, not only public projects, but also private projects. On structural reforms, fiscal responsibility, the main tools lie in the hands of member states. But the Commission has also some instruments to steer or to guide member states in some areas. The most important instrument is the European semester, coordination of economic policies. And in framework of European semester, every year the Commission publishes its country analysis of every member state. And also in May, proposes the country-specific recommendations. This year, in case of Slovakia, the Commission proposed recommendations regarding taxation, healthcare system, labor market, education, and business environment. These three areas, fiscal consolidation, structural reforms, and investment, they are really closely linked. And the close link is also between structural reforms, country-specific recommendations, and European structure and investment funds. Because to say clearly, for Slovakia, it's important to have also this European investment package. But the most important part is really to have efficient use of European funds, especially earmarked for Slovakia. And for the period 2014-2020, Slovakia has a possibility to use more than 15 billion of structural and investment funds in priority areas, infrastructure, education, employment, science, but also improvement of environment and public administration. So then I think this is the most important part. Maybe I will mention another two areas that they are more controversial. Recently, Commission proposed a migration agenda, and it has many parts, but the discussion in media focus mainly on quotas. But really, this agenda is extremely important for the EU because it's in certain way a threat for the EU that there is no cohesion, no solidarity. In order to tackle this sensitive and complex issue, Commission proposed several long-term policies like reducing the incentives for irregular migration, border management, strong asylum policy, and also on legal migration. But the controversy is more this these immediate actions. To have temporary distribution mechanism, relocation scheme, and also EU-wide resettlement scheme. And I think the proposal of the Commission is really a start to discuss how to help the countries with problems in this area, this high influx of immigrants, Italy and Greece. And maybe at the end, I would like to mention on the proposal on better regulation, on better lawmaking, because it's extremely important for the whole Europe that we have better European law bringing real benefits to the people. And for the good functioning of the EU, we need the EU that is working for citizens, but it's also understood by citizens and supported by citizens. And on better lawmaking, currently there's a proposal for the Commission how to improve transparency, analysis before preparation of legislation, and also to have constant review of existing legislation. But also it would be good to have interinstitutional agreement between the Commission, European Parliament, and the Council to have better lawmaking on all levels. Because the proposals from the Commission are only a start. Afterwards, there are many changes in the Council, many changes in the Parliament, and some changes are substantial, but there is no evaluation or no impact assessment of substantial changes. So for the future, it would be important to have such an agreement on interinstitutional lawmaking in order not to have at the end a complex legislation that is an additional burden for citizens. And I understand that it's difficult for 28 member states to agree on something. And sometimes I consider it as a miracle that at the end we have a result that is beneficial for citizens, but sometimes it's too complicated, complex, and creating a burden on enterprises and on citizens.
Great, thank you, Dušan, for not only outlining the contents of policies, but also looking at some of the process-related issues, like the way we make laws, or go about discussing policies, or also outlining the changes, the internal changes in the Commission, which was a very creative way of how to, in some respects, practically both avoid problems which are in the Treaty of Lisbon and the fact that we actually still have 28 commissioners in place, and how to achieve some sort of structure and effectivity. These are all important issues, and they will be important in terms of practicalities in putting these priorities into action, but also in terms of helping the Slovak presidency and creating opportunity for better coordination between the EP and the other institutions. But I'm also glad you mentioned this motto, let's do bigger projects in a big way and let's do lesser projects in a lesser way. My question is, do we actually have consensus on what the big projects are and what the lesser ones are? Maybe that's something to discuss in the next round. But certainly what's big on the table, whether or not we like it, is the question of how we strike a deal with the United Kingdom so we keep it inside the EU, and also the EU as such moves ahead a bit more happily, perhaps, than it is now. And I think that's my question to Nat in terms of how the UK is pitching the whole issue, what the things on the table are, and how you foresee discussion. But since you are an academic, or have been an academic for most of your professional life, I would be very happy if you feel free also to pick up some of the other issues. You just authored an excellent book on rethinking European integration. So if you want to tackle any of the questions of the EU's priorities and perhaps how these also jive with the idea of UK's priorities in the EU, that would be great. Nat, the floor is yours, and welcome back to Slovakia.
Thank you very much, Vlado. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be back here in Bratislava, in a slightly different role to the role that I've played before, so that's a nice change. I'm not going to speak for very long. I think I'll just make a few introductory points which set out a little bit the position of the British government. I think because I am an official, I probably won't take Vlado's opportunity to comment as an academic on the other activities of the Commission. But as you'll see from what I have to say, I think actually there is an enormous amount of common ground between the United Kingdom's priorities and those which have been so eloquently set out by the previous three speakers. So, Britain's policy. David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, is determined to make the European Union work better for people across Europe. He's already spoken to some European leaders as well as the Presidents of the Commission and the Council, and the Prime Minister is keen to talk to all leaders before the June European Council, which takes place, as you know, at the end of this month. The United Kingdom, and this is a point of commonality, I think, with what we've been talking about so far, wants to reform the European Union so that it creates jobs and increases living standards for all citizens, creating a stronger, more competitive, more outward-looking Europe that serves the interests of its member states. Therefore, we share quite a lot of common ground with our European Union partners on many of the main issues, and we've already made progress on reform which benefits everyone in Europe, including cutting red tape, better regulation, which we touched upon just a moment ago, so businesses grow and create jobs, turbocharging free trade, we talked a bit about TTIP as well this morning, and deepening the single market, another area that we've spent quite a lot of time on this morning, in the digital sector, the energy sector, and in the services sector. We are confident that we can find some solutions that address the concerns of the British people and improve the European Union as a whole. As the Prime Minister has said, Britain would benefit from being in a reformed European Union, but a reformed European Union would benefit from having Britain in it, and I'm pleased to hear that sentiment echoed along this table this morning as well. Renewing Britain's place in Europe will allow us to play a fully engaged role in the EU's future development. Of course, the Prime Minister has said that there will be different views and disagreements along the way. But the United Kingdom government is committed to working tirelessly with our partners in Europe to achieve meaningful reform that the British people will support in a referendum and that will benefit the European Union as a whole. So I'm going to leave plenty of questions on that rather broad set of remarks, I think. I'm sure you'll have a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you've invited many questions, but thanks for being brief and actually for leaving us some 35 minutes for discussion, questions, comments. We really do have the time to use it. And whoever wants to jump in first, ask a question, make a comment, please also briefly introduce yourselves. I see everybody is very keen. Lunch is waiting outside, but it will be another 35 minutes or so. Yes, please, young man.
I would like to ask Mr. Štefanec one question regarding this. You said that it includes also some parts of intellectual property, some regulations or something. I would like to ask how we know the real extension of these rules and these regulations of also regulation of intellectual property, or is another factor, or is something more easier to accept, because we know that European Parliament is ready to introduce factor that it was in the process. And another question, do you know what do you think when this will be implemented in practice? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those are easy questions. When are we going to go deep and what's going to be the deal on intellectual property, but very pertinent ones. My also take questions in Slováku, mne sa môžete písať po slovensky, takže nie je problém. Máš niekto otázku v tomto kole? Nech sa páči. Máte s nami ste rôzne startupy?
Nie sú to startupy.
Nie?
Nie, sú to normálne investície veľkých rozmerov.
Aha, jasné. Dobre. Ďakujem, thank you. Last question in this round, please.
My name is Nat Copsey, I'm from the Netherlands Embassy, and I would like to ask Mr. Copsey if you could perhaps evaluate or elaborate a bit more on your last remark, which you made, that European Union will benefit from the UK's referendum. So maybe from the UK's point of view, if you could elaborate a bit more on this remark.
Okay, thank you. And let's take one more. I said last one, but Thomas Raja had a hand up. So.
Thank you, Thomas Raja from Slovakian Police Association. I'd like to kindly ask the Parliament if they could elaborate a little bit more on the future of enlargement policy, because we know that the mood is not very positive in the EU. On the other hand, the Balkan problem is bad, it seems so. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, for raising this issue. Let's start. Ned invited several questions by statement, but I'll start with Member of Parliament, Mr. Štefanec. There was a question on TTIP and also enlargement question. And I'll move it to Nat Copsey, and then I'll let the other panelists also answer that question and comment also on the previous statements. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question about TTIP and intellectual property. Whether it will be new ACTA, I hope not. I hope it will be a new ACTA. I was very much fighting against ACTA. Being at the national parliament at the time, it's a matter of fact that European Parliament accepted ACTA, but later on the development was a different one. I'm very much against that. Talking about intellectual property rights, also it's true that the US is much better covered than the European Union, so I think we can only benefit from that. I think we should keep the principle of keeping private ownership. That's the basis. We have to keep private ownership, and that's the room for improvement in the European Union. So I think we can benefit if let me allow to do say so if we implement US standards in this case. So I think Europe can benefit. And in terms of time, this is really in process. We know that there is a political signal to finish negotiation by the end of this year. Still, there is a lot of open questions, so we are not sure if it will be finished by this year. But in my view, rather it's more important to prepare really better quality rather than do it as fast as possible. So it might be the case that we will, as Slovak presidency, deal with TTIP, and we can close next year probably. It would be a nice challenge for Slovakia. But really it's ongoing, so nobody knows now when it will be finished, but I do believe it will be finished next week. At the parliamentary session in Strasbourg, European Parliament will prepare a declaration about development of negotiation, and with some remarks, with some push for example, ISDS to include, which is another important topic, and also about these different aspects of TTIP. So European Parliament is very, very active. We as European parliamentarians have the access to the TTIP negotiations. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer in detail later on. If you have specific questions, I can have a look directly into this very transparent process. As I have to say, it has never ever been before in the terms of preparation of this agreement. So in terms of timing, I do hope it will be next year, but we know that it must be ratified in every national parliament, 28 countries. So it takes some time, maybe 2 years altogether, but I do believe it will be ratified because it is not only important point to create a larger market, it is in fact create a space of more than 800 million citizens. But it's more important that it will take almost half of world trade and introducing standards for the whole trade, standards of product, services, even dispute settlement and so on. So I think that's the most important aspect of TTIP to create standards for the whole trade, because I'm sure that others will copy that. In terms of enlargement, we know that the Commission stated very clearly that there will be no enlargement in this term by 2019, which was very, very much discussed in the European Parliament. There were many MEPs disagreed with that, I have to say, because, including myself, I have to say, because it was perceived rather as a negative signal for those countries who want to be in EU. So we didn't want to include that in the Commission program. However, at the end it was included that there will be no enlargement soon. At the same time, as we know, there are no association agreements with such countries like Ukraine signed last year. Association agreement is with Moldova and Georgia, and also with Balkan countries. I think that's the very clear position of European Union, that these countries have a chance to be part of European Union. In my view, the countries like Montenegro, Serbia, even Macedonia, despite current circumstances, they have a real chance, and they are quite prepared to be member of EU, not this period, but after 2019. I think it would be not only enlargement of the EU, but enlargement of this stability area and these chances for prosperity for these countries, which all of us we need in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for touching on enlargement. A couple of questions for Nat Copsey, one on investors, the other one on the referendum. Nat, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions. I'll start with the questions in the order that they were asked. So this question of uncertainty, I think that's a good point to raise. The answer to this, I think, is communication, really. So explaining what it is that we're doing and why. And as I said in my initial opening words, that the Prime Minister has already started talking to leaders about how we could work with them across the European Union. So engaging clearly and fully with our partners is very, very important. At the same time, I think we need to acknowledge that these talks are not going to be easy. They will take patience, they will take tenacity. There will be a lot of bumps along the road, so to speak, and there will be a lot of noise in the background, which I think is perhaps to a certain extent to what you were referring to. But the Prime Minister is determined to address the UK's concerns before the referendum in 2017. So I think communication really is the answer there. So frank and honest communication between our partners, valued partners like Slovakia, for example, and indeed all the other 27 member states of the European Union. The question which dealt with the benefits to the European Union, I think, is also an excellent question. The Prime Minister has been very clear on that as well, that the reform of the European Union is not just for British concerns, although as British Prime Minister, of course, those are high up on his agenda, but it is for the people of the European Union as a whole, all 500 million. Right? That's a key point. Now, Vlado was kind enough to make a mention of the book which I published at the beginning of this year, and in that book I introduced some of the challenges that the European Union is facing, and some of the points that I raised were to do with things like legitimacy, for example. And I suppose you could summarise perhaps how our plans will be useful for Europe as a whole. I think perhaps with four keywords. I think. And those keywords, I would say, are fairness, accountability, competitiveness, and prosperity. Now, in terms of how that translates into specific policy priorities, the Prime Minister has been very clear about what he wants from Europe, including in his Bloomberg speech when he announced that we would hold a referendum at the beginning of 2013. Now, what does that mean? That means reforming the welfare state, the British welfare state, to reduce the incentives that have encouraged migration from Europe. I think that's fair for us. I think that's also fair for the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, because there are concerns I know about the brain drain and so on. Increasing economic competitiveness to create jobs and growth for hard-working families, and of course protecting Britain's interests outside of the Eurozone. I think something else, from a member state perspective as well, it means halting the constant flow of powers to Brussels by including a stronger role for national parliaments, and dealing with the concept for the United Kingdom of the term in the preamble to the treaty of ever closer union. Now, ever closer union may be what some countries in the European Union want, but that is not for us.
Thank you. And Dušan Chrenek, no specific question to the Commission, but there's a question on enlargement and also a question on TTIP. Perhaps those are a couple issues which concern Commission quite tangibly.
Thanks. On enlargement. Enlargement is still a really important policy of the European Union, and in the past it was always bringing more stability to Europe and reunification. So it was extremely important for us, and we have seen positive benefits of enlargement policies. All Western Balkan countries, they have this perspective of being member of the European Union, and this policy is helping the Western Balkans, but it's necessary to be frank. So no country is so advanced that it could accede to the European Union during the term of the current Commission. Therefore, the Commission wanted to be clear on this point, two countries from the Western Balkans, and on the same side, on the same issue, frank towards the citizens. So that's really important for the Commission. And on enlargement policies, the Commission is working intensively with these countries, these candidates, and due to these policies, there is really more stability in the region. An example we can mention Serbia, Kosovo. If there is no real involvement from European Union, then the situation would be much worse. But also we have to take into consideration problems in the region. In some countries, recently in Macedonia, we have somebody from Prigentesi, so former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. But also, example is Bosnia and Herzegovina. When I started working in the Commission in 2007, I was negotiating the stabilization and association agreement with Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it's going to enter into force only now. So still, if there is no progress on reforms, the process is going to be long. Some countries are advancing faster. Montenegro, Serbia is doing progress, but some countries really they are lagging behind. But there is active involvement of the Commission. Recently, Commissioner Hahn visited Skopje in order to help solving the problems in the country, to assist. So always there is a good feel from the Commission, from European institutions, to help these countries on the way to the European Union.
Thank you. And last but not least, before we open up for the second round of questions, so please get ready. I would like to pass the floor to State Secretary Javorčík. There is a direct question on enlargement, but if you want to pick up any other issue, please feel free.
Yeah, thank you. I promised that in the beginning that I will be speaking about the UK issue a bit more, but I will do all the statements of Nat. I think that you mentioned that Prime Minister Cameron now was touring the capitals before the June summit. He will stop in Bratislava as well. And the message he is receiving, and the same will be heard in Bratislava, is that we want the UK to stay in the EU. And I think that this message gives a good start for the beginning of discussion. And there is clear goodwill on an unquote the member states. And during the June summit, I think that we will kick off the process of discussions in a positive manner. That's very important. But then we need to start to think and talk what's behind, what's after. And here I would say that the process needs to be quite careful. It's not seen as a negotiation between the UK and the rest of the EU. We need to really approach the discussion collectively, and in the spirit that what resonated also today, that it's an opportunity for the EU to change. And many things are underway already, but we need to maybe talk about it or to make them more profound, and also focus on the delivering of those changes. That's I would say that would be benefit of the whole process for everybody. And secondly, we have to be realistic, and I'm now referring rather to the UK government, what could be achieved in the process. Clearly, there is no appetite for quick changes. That this process would start some kind of process of quick change. More or less, there is an agreement, political agreement, that by 2017 we want to start a discussion. We are tackling this issue of possible treaty changes when we discuss the process of strengthening or deepening of the EMU, and that will be discussed in the June summit as well. How to make EMU, Eurozone, more resilient to future crises. There is agreement that we will concentrate the next 2 years, especially on those measures which do not require treaty changes. There is still scope for that. Maybe later on we can come back after So I think also the process of discussion we need to be in that framework. Also, we need to be very careful that the process doesn't turn to some kind of cherry picking, and the member state will start to put on the table what they don't like. For example, Poles, they don't like the climate policy very much, and they don't like targets, which were agreed last October. If they start to put on the table that we would like to have opt-out in these policies, I'm afraid that the union then will really rip apart, and that's not a exercise. So, but anyway, goodwill is here, and we need to have a very open and strong dialogue, and I think that message can come out as well. On enlargement, just a couple of words. We were, as well as the government, Slovakia, not very happy about the statement of the Commission, and the Commission knew that there will be enlargement to 2020. It's obvious that there won't be any enlargement, but the other thing is to state it very openly and send some kind of signal, and a signal of discouragement rather to the applicants or the candidates. So we really need to also have a quite good balance, because on the one hand, we would like those countries to reform and to undergo quite painful processes. So, but on the other hand, we need to give them a perspective. So if we would like to push, and I think it's interest of those countries and the EU that they come closer to the Union, we need to give them also quite clear European perspective. So to this statement of the Commission and attitude of some member states, I think is not balanced. And during our presidency, of course, we will have a quite limited possibilities how to push the process forward, but definitely we will try what's possible. Maybe just last remark on the interinstitutional agreement. This is a topic which is rather technical and for the internal circles in Brussels, but should be not underestimated, and I think it's very important, because until now we have just an agreement between the Commission and the Parliament, and the third pillar of the institutions, three main institutions, Council was left apart, and it created some problems in the internal workings of the institution in the last couple of years. We would like to make it differently again this time, so to have agreement among all three institutions, and it's not just about technically how we define the laws and to have an integrated assessment, but also to have a clear vision between all three institutions, what are the priorities, how we plan our legislative process, and that at the end there is a delivery. So start was again quite encouraging. We hope to have the agreement by the end of the year behind us, so there should be agreement among three institutions. Maybe it will take longer, but I think it's also fundamental for the good work of the institutions to have this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for touching on the issue of the treaty change. So we shouldn't expect a new Bratislava Treaty to replace the Lisbon Treaty. That's perhaps one certainty from our EU presidency we can conclude already today. Let's do another round of questions. We have about 10 minutes, so let's take a few questions or comments. If anybody has, yes, please. One more. Batch and receiver.
Anyway, thank you. I have a question on TTIP. 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a debate in the Slovak Parliamentary Committee for European Affairs on TTIP. During this debate or during this meeting of the committee adopted a resolution, which I think was also subsequently sent to the European Commission. And in this resolution, the committee calls for a better involvement of national parliaments in the TTIP agreement negotiations. So my question would perhaps go to the representative of the European Parliament, Mr. Štefanec, and the representative of the European Commission, Mr. Chrenek. What is your opinion about better involvement of national parliaments in the TTIP negotiations?
Thank you very much. National parliaments and TTIP negotiations. question. Yes, one more here, and then one more here. Okay, let's take the one back there. Young gentleman on the left.
Thank you. Student University. So one of the most important interests of David Cameron is to regulate the basis of the EU single market, and it is a freedom of movement. And my question for Mr. Copsey is, if the UK wish to remain a member of the EU, even if they will not succeed to regulate free movement in the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very clear question and very pertinent to our part of the world. And last question, Susanna. This conference is largely about internal EU issues, but defense is clearly on the table and actually will be on the table during the upcoming European Council, so if anybody wants to pick it up, I think that would be also very useful. Let's do it this way. If nobody has a question, I'll just add one more, if I may, to Nat's list of things, because you raised the issue of accountability and the legitimacy question. And two things actually come to mind, which I'd like to ask about since you work in the referendum unit. One is how far and how much are you thinking about the various measures which would be taken to strengthen national parliaments further? What would be the UK perspective on this? We've got the yellow card. There's been some talk about red cards and other things. So what is your thinking and how far is it developed on this? And the second issue is about this idea that the deal we need to strike should be one which makes the UK happy enough and the rest of the EU not angry in any fundamental way, so we actually kind of are fairly content in the end. We've got some models from the past, like the Danish referendum on Maastricht and then the political declaration. We've got the Irish second referendum on the Treaty of Nice and a political declaration. How much and how far are you looking at these issues from the past as an inspiration for what the UK might do? That would be my question to add to your list of things. And if you don't mind, let's start with the member of European Parliament, because there was a direct question on the issue of TTIP and the involvement of national parliaments and the specific declaration from Slovakia. So, Mr. Štefanec, please, the floor is yours. And also, if you want to pick up any other things to have your last word, you're most welcome now.
Thanks. Yeah, let me say very clearly, I welcome involvement of national parliaments because, as I said before, TTIP must be ratified in by national parliaments. So, if they are involved even sooner, there might be clarified all the open issues. I think it's even better. Not to be surprised at you, but rather to clarify all the issues. So if there is really interest, they are really welcome. European Parliament meets national parliamentarians regularly, twice per year. So also there is the place to raise those issues, but also at the different occasions. And if national parliament won't be, even especially Slovak national parliament wants to be involved more, I don't have a problem at all. Just I welcome it. I welcome this interest. If I can pick up just shortly the defense, yeah. Important question because this is very much connected with energy security as well, particularly taking into consideration Russian war in Ukraine this year and coming from last year and also continuing this year. So this we shouldn't be blind and we should talk about that. And this is very, very actual topic in the European Parliament. My position is that we have to talk about defense policy, about common defense policy, which is a part of common foreign policy of the European Union. But at the same time, we shouldn't replace our defense forces, which are in NATO, by some special European forces which should be like, we we shouldn't duplicate our current defense system. That's my point. I'm very much pro European cooperation, state by state, or in E4 countries. There are more and more cooperation not only between Czech and Slovaks, but also among other states in E4 or together with other countries. We can optimize our defense forces. We should talk about defense strategy, but at the same time, we should not duplicate our NATO defense forces. That's our umbrella. We should keep very efficient. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Egypt and Slovakia, you from the European Commission, but also defense. The head of the European Commission did make a statement on the EU army not too long ago, which kind of sparked a large debate on what the EU's role should be in defense. So, Dušan, please.
Thanks. On DDIP, also we welcome discussions in the national parliaments and also their contribution, their resolution of opinion about the DDIP. And the Commission is completely transparent on the process, also publishing a mandate, the main positions, so every citizen actually has a right to comment and give its opinion on these negotiations. So the process is transparent, and we are looking forward really to receive positions of stakeholders, people and the parliament on the negotiations, because our objective is to have the best agreement, really giving chance to European business to prosper more, but at the same time to defend European values, European standards in the social area, food safety, health issues. So to take into consideration all interests. And we need support of all countries. All countries supported mandate, so really the governments are supporting negotiations. And also it's necessary their involvement in the discussion on national level. So it's not only the Commission, but it's for member states, the governments, to speak with people, to discuss, to explain. And in this area also the Ministry of Economy is really playing a crucial role. And I hope that together we will be able to achieve a balanced agreement acceptable by people, by parliament. So that's our interest. On defense, definitely the Commission would like to see more cooperation, more coordination, at least in arms industry, because if defense sector is more open, definitely it would lead to savings, and it would be much better for defense industry in Europe. And actually, when we do polls, public opinion polls, Eurobarometer, absolute majority of citizens support defense cooperation, or actually defense policy. So they would like to see defense policy of the European Union. And already we have crisis management operations, some military operations in Africa, but also mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So there are some positive examples. But this is competence of member states, and it's up to member states to agree on stronger cooperation. But from the Commission, there is a desire to go further, and it was already included in 10 priorities in one part of stronger global player. It was mentioned that we should look for stronger cooperation in defense area.
Thank you for answering and clarifying. I'd like to ask the Secretary to pick up the questions, perhaps maybe defense issue, but also anything else you may briefly want to comment. Please.
Thank you. I think on defense, was said by those speakers before me, so the position is quite clear. And I will touch on DTIP a bit here. the trade agreements, there are some losers, some winners. But I'm quite convinced that for Slovakia, we are on the winning side in the sense that TTIP will really open up the new opportunities for business in much bigger way than might be a challenge or threat for some other businesses in this country. So and that's therefore we are in the camp of those who are pushing for the TTIP and are rather positive. But the problem is that there is no voice of those who are against are much more vocal and probably much more heard. And even there are many myths around the TTIP which doesn't help this political environment to conclude negotiations. It's not that much in Slovakia, but rather, let's say, in Austria, where the TTIP is a big political issue and a lot of discussions around that. But take an example of the CSDS clause. I would say again, some myths was created about how the American court will now decide what's for the Europeans to decide. But let's say from a Slovak perspective, if we have a regulation at the European level with the US, I think we will be in much better position comparing to the current structure of the bilateral investment agreement. So it's clearly in the Slovak interest to go ahead also with in this area. Coming back to the question of the UK referendum once again, there is quite a long list of issues or items to be discussed, and it's quite well known from the UK government. One of them was mentioned, the involvement of the national parliament. I think that's a very legitimate question, and we would be quite favorable to look on it. And we wisely designed the whole system of having a green or other cards on the table. I think that it would be helpful and increase the legitimacy of the whole process and the event as such. So here the discussion will be quite beneficial for all of us. On the other hand, the freedom of persons, that seems the issue which will be mostly challenged and most sensitive for Slovakia and the countries of the region. And here the position is not quite clear, and it was communicated some time ago that freedom of persons is one of the fundamental principles and should not be touched upon and to be changed. We can then talk about the details, which is behind that, for example, what kind of benefits some migrant workers have. But here again, if we go to this level of discussion, and I'm sure that we will at a certain point, for us it's very important to preserve the principle of non-discrimination, so that our workers in the UK are treated in the same manner like the domestic ones. If there are some rules which changed overall in the EU, let's discuss them, and we will be quite open that there is no misuse and use of the free circulation of people. So we need to also clearly distinguish the fundamental freedom and what's the issue when the migrants try to abuse the system of other member states.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, the UK ball is in Nat's hands. Please.
Thanks, Vlado. So, on the question about freedom from the European Union, what is within the European Union, what will Cameron's position be on that? I suppose the question here is about whether the Prime Minister is going to insist on all of his asks in order to advocate staying in the European Union, or does or not. I think the answer to that question is that the Prime Minister is confident that with the goodwill and understanding that we've heard so much of today, he can and will succeed in negotiating to reform the European Union and Britain's relationship with it. As he has said, of course, if he succeeds, he will campaign to keep the EU in a reformed European Union. But if he does not achieve those things, then he rules nothing out. Okay, and that's the position that the Prime Minister has made very clear from the beginning. So this is not a done deal. Now, at the same time, and I think I'm very grateful actually to Javorčík for making this point, we need to be very clear about what we're talking about when it comes to free movement. I think the position of the government is that what we need to look at is not the principle of free movement, but what are the principal what are the elements driving particular flows in particular directions. Now that means for us in the United Kingdom to look at our domestic legislation to ensure that the structure of the British welfare state, which is actually rather different to the welfare state in other member states because it's universalist and it requires no contribution before you can claim from it. So we need to look at that. And we also need to ask ourselves some questions about how unique that welfare system is in Europe, and on the basis of that uniqueness, whether there is room for some sort of discussion around that, some productive discussion. But as Peter has made clear, I think there is an understanding there that nobody is in favour of abuse of the welfare system. I think there's room for some good discussions there with all of our partners, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, on that issue, because there is a common shared aim, I think, in ensuring that skilled workers are not necessarily all sort of moving in one direction, I suppose. So the free movement question, I think, needs to be explained very clearly on the part of the British government. So that's a very important point. The second point, the legitimacy point of Vlado, is about national parliaments. Yes, of course, we're sort of considering all the options here. I would say two things on it. I think three things actually. So this is not a particularly new idea. This idea has been around for a while. I think it was the government of the Netherlands actually that raised this point originally. It's a question of a couple of things really. I suppose the first point which I would mention is that when you look at the treaty and what it says about national parliaments can use these cards which exist within the treaty on two grounds, and those grounds are subsidiarity and proportionality, those two wonderful words of European Union jargon. So in other words, decisions should be taken at the lowest possible level, and the instruments to make those decisions should be the right ones, if you see what I mean. So if national parliaments believe that legislation which may be on the brink of being proposed is somehow contradictory to those two fundamental European Union principles for lawmaking, then they will have grounds for asking questions about it, right? Which leads me into my second point. So, what is it that national parliaments need to exercise their powers more effectively? Well, the answer to that, I think, is better coordination structures between the national parliaments, so that they can work together in areas where they're identifying interests. Nobody is talking here about unilateral vetoes for national parliaments or anything of that sort. So, I think that kind of answers that. Just, coming out to Vlado's point about the different options, treaty change and so on, how you achieve that, how you get all of these things. As a general principle, I think it's probably best to begin with the what, what is needed, what can we agree to, and then worry about the how afterwards. And that seems to be the view of the other member states as well, which is an entirely sensible position. Does the Prime Minister think the treaty change is necessary? Yes. His view hasn't changed. Some of the changes that the UK wants will require treaty change, and the Prime Minister is confident that he can negotiate that. Vlado mentioned the point about the Danish option, the Edinburgh Protocol at the time of the Maastricht Treaty, following the unsuccessful Danish referendum, of course. What is important here really is not the exact mechanism, but it's the fact that we address the concerns of the British people about the European Union. As the Prime Minister has said previously, some of the ways to address those concerns on migration and welfare, for example, could require treaty change. And I think that's a very important point to make. So in terms of, perhaps the most important point, the Prime Minister rules nothing out. Will the British government take the United Kingdom out of the EU if the outcome of a referendum is a no vote? The Prime Minister has personally said that he will respect the decision, and the government is clear that it will honour the result of the referendum, whatever the outcome.
Thank you very much. It's been a very rich discussion, actually. We got to a lot of data and some answers, so I'm very grateful. It's been a big topic, but I'm grateful to all of you for sticking to the questions and actually leaving us, I think, largely with an upbeat or positive note in terms of what's ahead of us and where we move on, despite the remaining questions about the UK and the EU and, of course, policy issues such as TTIP and future of European European defense. Before we move on to a more specific discussion on energy and energy markets in Slovakia and Central Europe in the afternoon at 1:30 at 1:30, I'd like to invite you all to lunch downstairs. Enjoy it and please do come back in time. And also I'd like to ask you to help me thank the wonderful panelists before lunch. So see you soon.